Malcolm taught me this. Brian taught me this. But no one ever taught me how to bridge the gap between these very different ways of playing until the night of November 17th, 1997. The night I got struck by lightning. At the time, my band landed a really cool gig, a corporate gig. We had to play a 5-hour set, but it paid really well. Now, at the time, I thought that I had to make a choice between being a rhythm player, like Malcolm, or a lead player, like Brian, and I picked Brian. I love lead guitar. That's what got me into playing, and so I was the lead player of that band. And honestly, playing lead guitar, at least the way I played it at the time, was super easy. The hard work was on the rhythm player because I didn't have to learn all the chords. All I had to do was figure out the minor pentatonic scale to use over the song, and I always found one and just use that shape and go for it. It always worked. I had it really easy, especially in longer sets, like that corporate gig. We had to play about 5 hours worth of material. Now, we played covers, mostly pop songs, and most of these songs were in the same key, which is really nice for me. I didn't even have to look at my set list. Now, the other guy, he had it way worse than me. He had this big binder with all the songs and really had to follow the charts. There's no way he can memorize all those chords. I remember that evening really well because it was raining really hard that night. The gig happened inside. It was a corporate event. People were having their drinks, music in the background, and I had it super easy. Just let loose on the minor pentatonic scale. And that's pretty much all I did in my career as a guitar player up to that point. Now, thinking back, I should have read the warning signs. There was something with my guitar tone that wasn't quite right. Like a dip in the volume every once in a while happening, and that was an electrical issue. And about 2 hours in, that's when it happened. At first I saw light. The whole room was super bright, and then nothing. The sound stopped. The whole building got struck by lightning. Thankfully, no one got hurt, and besides kind of a zap to my guitar, and that just lasted about a minute. Then the lights came back on, our amps got back on, we were ready for the second half of the set. Now, here's what's interesting. We were right in the middle of this song when that electricity surge happened. And we thought it would be cool to just pick up right where we left off. The other guitar player who was in charge of the rhythm said, hey, let's pick it up from the G. I had no idea what part of the song he was referring to. And there's no way I would tell them that I didn't know. I trusted my minor pentatonic scale. I just nodded. Let's do it. Great idea. As the drummer counts us in, I reach for that minor pentatonic scale, ready to play the bend, knowing that it'll work. It didn't. Out of all the chords in that song, that G was the only one that didn't fit the minor pentatonic scale. I got up the next day determined to fix that problem. How can I play lead guitar while knowing exactly what chord is being played in the background? I started studying scale degrees, analyzing different chord progressions, went through the jazz standards. It was super complicated. See, I've always been more of an organic player. I love to feel things. I love to react to things. I'm not against understanding the rules, but they need to be simple and clear and usable. What I was studying in those jazz harmony books seemed to be a lot more cerebral than anything else, and I didn't want to lose that organic way of playing. All right, back to the drawing board. I decided to make an assessment of all the things I knew. I knew that there was a link between the scale I was using, which was pentatonic for the most part, and the chords that were being played in the background. And that's what made the scale work over these chords. In other words, the chords were found within the scale I was using. So I knew this, but it was hard to visualize on the guitar. The reason is that the guitar player typically played in this area of the fretboard, while I was playing in this zone of the fretboard. That was really important. I had to find a way to bridge the gap between this zone of the fretboard and this one. Easier said than done because my fretboard knowledge sucked. I started by visualizing this, and I did this on long walks. Before trying to implement this into my playing, I thought about it a lot. I would visualize those scales, I would visualize the chord shapes, I would try to understand how to bridge that gap. And then I realized that there are only 12 possible notes. That means that I could play the same exact note in different areas of the guitar. Pretty obvious. So I ran back home and grabbed the first guitar I found, which thankfully was this Lava Me because it has a built-in looper, and that's exactly what I needed. I decided to go with a G chord, which really started this whole thing. I turned on my Lava guitar, and because the battery life on these things is so long, I didn't have to charge it. I went into the looper mode, put on one of the included drum loops, and started grooving with a G chord. Once I had that, I played the scale in the position that I was comfortable with and moved each of these notes within that G chord. A totally different position. It was a little bit awkward first, but eventually I started developing some comfort. And the idea was to play lead, improvise melodically, but the trick was to stay within this area of the fretboard, matching my scale with the chord position. Once I got comfortable with that, I moved to another chord. This time, I went with the A minor chord, and I decided to use this position. Same deal, I matched the scale to that chord and started jamming along. Things got easier and easier because as I explored new chords, I started to find some similarities between them. And I also found that I was no longer thinking in terms of positions. I was thinking of the sounds I wanted to create within these chord shapes, and my fingers kind of responded to the thoughts in my head. The trick is to make sure to activate your internal ear as you're playing. This is what it looks like. You play a note and you sing it. And then you play another note and you sing it again. And that connection between what you're playing and hearing will automatically happen. And fortunately, as I was developing this new way of playing, something kind of crept in. See, while I was super comfortable with the first position of the minor pentatonic scale, I was not as comfortable with these new shapes and positions. And my playing sounded a little mechanical. That's most likely going to happen to you if you start developing that. Thankfully, there's a super easy fix that I'll talk about in this video. You should watch this because combined with what we talked about today, amazing things will happen. You won't be disappointed. I'll meet you right there.